it.
No problem.
It won't be a
Sounds
problem.
good. All right, so I believe, are live. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Patrick Milliken from the Poison Pen, and we're here with another of our virtual events. And I'm very excited to have our good friend, Rachel Howzell Hall, talking about her new book, These Toxic Things, a standalone thriller. And very excited. It's always great to welcome a debut novelist. And tonight we have Yasmin, and is it Angoe? I'm just going for the
Angoe.
Excuse
me? It's Angoe.
Angoe. I should always establish this before we go live. Yasmin.
Oh, it lends a certain informality to the whole thing, Patrick.
That's right.
Okay.
And her kick-ass killer debut, her name is Night. And Yasmin sent us some book plates, and so we have copies with book plates. And Rachel has signed some books for us. And I'll put these in the comments field if I can figure out how to do that while I'm talking. But for those of you watching on YouTube and Facebook, welcome. And if you have questions for Rachel or Yasmin, don't be shy, put them in, and I'll keep my eye on the comments field. So anyway, and Barbara's joining us from her home, and she's going to kick us off, and then we're going to have a good time. So over to you, Barbara.
Thank you so much, Patrick. You can do your housekeeping stuff while I talk. So
yes.
It'll make it fairly easy. I'm on puppy duty tonight, so I'm probably going to have to go and feed the beast here before too long. But I, like Patrick, am delighted to see Rachel again. She has been, I think you've been with us for virtually
since 2014. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we have a long relationship, and while I'm sad you're not here in person, it's lovely to be able to see you. This is our November crime book of the month for those club members, and I picked it, as I was saying to Rachel, because it takes you into a digital age, and it's definitely a book that the under 40, as opposed to the over 80 person that I am, can actually read and enjoy. So it'll be fun. Patrick will be exploring it, whether it's had a wonderful reception. Her Name is Night is our international crime book of the month for November. And we get to visit Ghana, which is a wonderful, well, actually what happens in Ghana is not wonderful. So maybe I should say that until the end, and I can't tell you about the end when there's some very nice things that happen in Ghana. It really is an international thriller because our lead character spends time in London. She's in Miami, so she's all over. So Yasmin, tell us a bit about the first place when you see it. Her Name is Night. Notice it's with a K, although it is kind of a double entendre, right? So yes. Where did you? I don't want to say where'd you get your idea, but where'd you get your heroine? Let's try that.
Wow, that's a good question. She is someone that I was kind of thinking about for a long time. And didn't know quite yet what I wanted to do with her. So it was like some years and all, I just jotted that down in my notes that she was always going to be like the head of like a crime syndicate. And so, but I just didn't know what kind of story I wanted to have with her. And so when my dad had passed and I was thinking about just like his culture, where he's from and all this other stuff, and how can I like highlight his culture and also talk about like my relationship that I had with him, because we had such a great relationship. And so that kind of sparked it. And I was like, well, I could kind of use her and put her in this story, you know, about her dad and all this stuff. So that's really how it kind of came. And it probably doesn't make sense to y'all right now, but like this, it does. Okay. So like that was, and I was dealing with like the grief and things. And so I used her to kind of help me go through that. So a lot of the things that you see in the story is, you know, Yasmin trying to process a whole lot of things. And so she processes it through this lead character in some serious ways. Yeah.
That's a wonderful answer. Now, I'm too chicken to try to pronounce her name, so I'm going to let you do it because she actually has two names.
Yes, she has a whole lot of names, and that's also like something that's a theme in there, is that she's called a many different names, and so it's really about like identity and her identity and all these things that people call her, and then finally the name that she chooses for herself. So because it's written in dual, when she is her younger self, her name is Anine. And then when she is present day, then her name is Nina, which is what she names herself.
And her father's name, her deceased father's name is Michael. And so
Mm-hmm.
when it's not a spoiler because this is at the beginning of the story, but there's a tragedy that overtakes her life when she's 14, completely derails her life. Why did you decide to start with something like that? Because it's really horrific.
Yeah, it is. Why did I want to start it that way? Well, because at that time I was in a pretty dark place myself, and I was dealing with, grief, loss, and how do I come out of loss? How do I rebuild? Like when my dad passed, it felt like this big, huge chunk of me was gone. This person who's raised me, who helped raise me for so many years. And like, what happens when the people that you really love are just totally gone? And there's nothing, like how do you come from that? And so so that's where her story, the village, how Michael is, and everything, the language, the dialect that they speak, those are all dialects. That's what my father spoke. And the region is a blend of like my mother and my father's regions where they're from. So it was very much like me. I want to show, this village. It was so idyllic. And, this might have been this is me imagining how life would have been had I had I been born and raised in Ghana, right? So we would have this wonderful village, and it would, dad would be a chief, and, I would be like essentially the princess or whatever, because these were the kind of stories that were told to me. And so I'm like regurgitating these things, and then this loss happens. And so how does this character rebuild herself from this loss? And so the story is definitely not a trauma story at all. But it is a story about, this one person who goes through all these things, and these things make her the person, they help to make her the person that she is today, because she chooses to take back her power that was stolen from her, because she chooses to save herself in these situations, and she chooses to survive. And so she's also dealing with survivor's guilt, right? Survivor's guilt, because I also had guilt, for not being there when my dad passed away. So she's dealing with, how am I the one that survives? You know what I mean? So there's a lot of that. And so, like I said, all that stuff, all that dark stuff that I was going through was channeled in these different ways. And then also, at the time when I was working, I had gone to some seminars where they had survivors of sex trafficking. They were talking about their stories. And I was just so enthralled and so like in awe of how strong they were and how they had survived and saved themselves and reclaimed their life. And so I also wanted to really, pay homage to them and their strength, and how they were able to get through, and what happened to them didn't, make them hate the world or whatever. They flourished, at the end, and in whatever choices that they made. And so I wanted to talk about, this confusion that I had about how these things still happen. How are people still being, sold into slavery in the 21st century, when we all know that's a bad thing? And how is it that it could be happening literally next door and we wouldn't know about it? You know what I mean? So those are all the different things that I was trying to explore in an action thriller that, I don't know. I was trying to throw a whole lot of things.
That's a comprehensive answer. I was going to be simpler and say, it's a revenge story, and then there's redemption. So like 2 hours out of 3.
I said, I'm going to tell Barbara everything, I see you, right,
Rachel,
now.
Rachel's been sort of shaking her head. What would you like to ask? Yes.
Well, it's funny. Our books, they seem on the face very different, but they have some similarities, and it's all about origin stories and what stories we choose to tell, and who we choose to believe, and what memories are worth remembering, and which ones are a little kind of weird and thwarted. And I like all your answers. Like, why do we do the things we do? And with toxic things, it's dealing with young kids or Gen Z who don't capture their memories like we captured them. My story came out of looking at my 17-year-old daughter and how all her pictures are on her phone. And, you know, we grew up, we have albums upon albums upon albums and tchotchkes and refrigerator magnets, and our memories are 3D. We can touch them, we can hold them and say, ah. So I was looking at her during the pandemic, and, you know, you're doing all these like projects back in March of 2020. And I was cleaning out closets and remembering things. And she wanted to print out pictures. And it just made me happy because now the memory would be real to her.
Mhm.
And I started thinking about how for her, her memories are both analog because we still capture, you know, refrigerator magnets and souvenirs, but you know, for her, her memories are on her phone. You know, we all get that, this is what you were doing 6 months ago, that picture that pops up on your phone to kind of remind you of where you were. So I wanted to take, you know, both worlds, my world and her world, and smush it into a story with this little device that plays back memories and pictures and 3D holograms of what used to be, and stories that Mickey, the main character, you know, she writes them with older people who, you know, the shop owner is forgetting things. And, you know, I wanted all these generations sharing memories in their different ways. And I'm also at the age where family memories and family stories and secrets are coming out. And I'm amazed by them because I thought that happened that way. And I'm learning that wasn't that at all. And that could be disturbing. I'm sure my daughter's gonna, when she gets to be even 30, will stumble upon something that I told her 20 years ago, and the story will change. So it's like yours, it's about family, it's about memory, it's about tragedy and how we hurt each other. It's you know, all these ideas kind of transcend continents and generations, unfortunately, but fortunately.
It's interesting how archiving our lives have changed. You know, Patrick and I often talk about what gold mines our phones are. I mean, we have, you know, we've had the poison pen for 32 years, and we probably have what, digital coverage for 20 or 25 of it. It's a little shaky at the beginning. I still have a box of photos from various things that that we've done. But, you know, it's so funny. I filled out my global reentry program the other day, which was a nightmare to do. And I recognized a section where, you know, where have you been? What countries have you been in since 2016? And I figured it out by going to my phone and opening up the photos and then searching by year, you know, because I was taking photos as I traveled. And I thought, I'm wondering if many of us are going to have weaker memories because we rely so much now on the technology.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm a research librarian at heart. So, you know, if we don't have paper trails, if we don't have anything but bits in a cloud, how are we going to do a lot of the things? How are we ever going to find like a lost symphony of Beethoven, or because apparently, you know, it's hard for me to get my mind around it. It's one of the reasons I thought your book was so interesting, you know.
Well, I think about your passport, your old passport.
Yeah.
We just sent off to renew ours. And I want our old ones because I want to look through the stamps, because the stamps make me remember, oh, that's right. When we went to France that first time, to Paris, we had TGI Fridays and it was the worst meal we've ever had. You know, I remember those things, and you want to hold it. You know, it's a weird thing that something that has no value monetarily has tremendous value, you know, and those things that we choose to keep and toss.
And pretty soon passports are going to become irrelevant because, you know, when I checked in for a flight from Egypt 2 years ago, you walked into a scanner and that was it.
Oh,
you don't
that
have
face
a ticket,
thing.
you don't have a passport, nothing, you know, there you are.
Yeah.
And of course, it's more reliable in the sense that, you know, you don't get into that whole fake paper thing.
Right.
Or, you know, vaccine cards that are fake, whatever it may be. Right. which I love. Patrick, what would you like to, you want to take over? And
Sure, I can
I
hear
know
the
you're prepared.
I can hear the natives barking in the
I
back.
can too, so I think that I probably should go before there's a massacre. But I really did want to meet you, Yasmin, and I wanted to say hello to Rachel because we have such a nice long history together.
Yes.
So I hope you guys have a wonderful program. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Lovely
you.
seeing you
Thank
again,
you.
Barbara.
Yeah.
Yes, bye.
All right, now the real fun begins. No, no. It's funny, Rachel. You mentioned a through line or some connective tissue between your two books. And I really, now that you mention it, I really do see it. I do.
Yeah.
And this whole idea of memory is so provocative and fascinating. It's like, you think about, all right, well, what happens if I lose access? Because like everybody else, my world is mediated by this little device. And, and I probably have like 5 years of really important memories, that my wife and I have experienced together.
Yeah.
And I'd be freaking devastated if I lost this.
Right.
Right. And
But that's also where the connection with family and loved ones come in.
Absolutely.
Like Yasmin's characters, there's this very tight bond with the parents, with the father character, and the same with Mickey and her parents. And what that relationship means. It means, love, of course, but it also means not always telling the truth to protect your child. I find myself kind of like shaving off some things to protect her. And what that means when she finds out the whole truth, hopefully she won't become like, an international assassin, but although that would be kind of sexy, but what will that reaction be,
Yeah, right. Well, let's talk a little bit about Eleanor Taylor Bland, because Yasmin, you won that wonderful prize.
I judged. I helped pick her.
I did.
Oh, yeah?
I know.
Yes.
Rachel's my fairy godmother.
Yes.
Fairy god sister. What am I talking about?
I felt it. I felt it.
That's too cool. Did either of you get a chance to meet her before she passed? Did you know her, Rachel?
I did not. I did not get a chance to meet her. No.
I
But it
did.
was such an honor to read in her name,
Yeah, she was cool. She came to the Poison Pen.
Oh, really?
Several times early on, I want to say. She was in Chicago, right? Isn't that where she lived?
Yes.
Yeah. I have these vague memories. But yeah, what a cool lady. And a real trailblazer in a lot of respects, right?
Yeah. No, it's a wonderful contest for those people who are watching now. It's through Sisters in Crime, and it is a contest to elevate and celebrate of crime writers of color. And last year, Yasmin was one of the entries, and Alex Segura and I, during our those early pandemic days, we read through hundreds of entries, and her story stood out. She had this incredibly strong voice, which I love. I love voice. I like picking up something and saying, "Oh, so and so wrote that," and Yasmin had that, which is why she won.
Well, it's such a gutsy book in so many ways. I mean, not just the material that you're dealing with, and I want to get into it in some depth here and ask you about it, but also stylistically. I mean, there's some real risks, and I love what you did. You just went for it, and let's talk about the point of view. And Rachel, please jump in anytime. But I love how you there are actually two different books, that exist at the same time. One of which you wrote in, the before chapters were in first person present tense, which is you don't see very often. And then the after chapters are in third person past tense. And then ultimately we do get to now, people, don't worry, but I'm not going to give any spoilers. Talk about, was that that kind of style, those twin narratives, something you had from the very beginning, or did that come out of the writing, or how did that come about?
Yeah, the twin writing did come, and I actually wrote one all the way through and then worked on the other one, because you're right, they were essentially two books in one. So the first drafts were really big, if you know, and so there was a lot of cutting that went down with this book. But I wrote them both individually, and then I just, you know, cutting where I felt like the before chapters needed to be to kind of align a little bit with the after chapters. So yeah. And the before chapters are in first person present, because I felt that the characters were so different. They were like two different people. I mean, they are two different people in a sense. And Anine, as a before, I wanted her story to be very present and real time to the reader. I wanted the reader to really get in her whole soul, right? And to experience things as she is experiencing it. And at that time, she's innocent, and she would be more inviting of people to come in and see like what she's feeling and what she's thinking. And then in the after chapters, you know, Nina is not, she's very closed off, right? And nobody can really tell like what's going on within her. So therefore her voice had to be third person, you know, past, because she is, you know, aside from everyone else, and she's not inviting people in. So therefore, when you read it, you can't be invited in her mind, even though you know what she's thinking in third person, but it's not going to be as personal as it was when she was this innocent, open person who hadn't experienced all these things and wasn't experiencing all these things.
It's right. You know, she seems in some ways like there's almost like a classical hero archetype at play behind her. At least the way I read her, you know, I mean, she's a survivor of, you know, horrific trauma. And, you know, a lot of the heroes, and, you know, Rachel Liu too, to a certain degree, I'm thinking about in particular, you know, the classic hero story of, you know, going on this journey. Right. You know, it's not just going out, and then we can talk about what, you know, how knight is relevant in a lot of ways. You know, the hero of the, you know, the knight errant who goes out and solves these adventures. But there's that sense of going out on the journey, not just of going out and solving physical things, but the interior journey, you know, and then coming back home in a lot of ways. And so I identified that a lot in Nina.
Thank you.
Is that stretching, do you think, Rachel?
No. I think that's not. What do you think, Rachel? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. Mickey's journey is in some ways different, but the same. She is on a path of self-discovery. Yes, who am I? Who is she? And also, who is this client that she is working for, who has passed? She's died. And so she can't ask her directly, who are you? But through these 13 things that Mickey's archiving on her behalf, she's finding out slowly but surely who this client is, who Nadia is, through the objects, through the store manager, Riley, through her son, Dexter, through Nadia's son, Dexter. And it's all discovery for Mickey, who is this young woman who's kind of been protected in her life. She lives behind her parents' house in a nice little, you know, granny type flat. And she's not traveled. I mean, she's traveled, but she hasn't gone anywhere beyond like the 10 miles, you know, around her parents or her childhood home. And it is self-discovery. And when I wrote this is the first story that I've written really that isn't centered on my experience. I am 51, so I'm not this ingenue 24-year-old just out of college with young lovers and all the rest of it. No, I'm writing this story thinking about my 17-year-old daughter and my 27-year-old niece who just celebrated a birthday yesterday, who are these vibrant, wonderful young women who I call dolphins. They're friendly and they flip and do tricks and they're engaging and they're loved. They are so loved and they're so held close. And, you know, there are girls every day who, despite their parents' love and the protection that family offers them, they meet tragedy unfortunately. And so as a mom, I'm starting to write more stories about young women who are finding out who they are and claiming an identity away from their parents, and just how treacherous that can be, how glorious. I'm looking forward to my daughter going to college next year. But as a crime writer, and an avid watcher of HLN and ID Discovery, I am very much aware of the bad characters and the bad plots and the unhappy endings. And so I'm finding myself writing these types of younger, wide-eyed dolphin girls.
Well, it's funny, Rich, I was going to ask you that, the digital archaeology.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you a little bit, was that your own? I mean, there are versions of that we see around, but nothing quite like this.
Right. There was something a long time ago, this organization, I applied for a job there and it ended up not going anywhere. And the company ended up saying, yeah, that's stupid. We're not going to do that. Of kind of digitally archiving things. We've done it. We've taken all of our videotapes and our camcorder tapes, and we've sent them to, I can't even remember what their name is, and they've digitized it for us. But there wasn't anything that was like an Alexa device where you uploaded the memories and it played the memories with this kind of curated story and played a hologram. All that just came from this place, and what I wanted her to do. I mean, the whole road trip component, I came up with that too, because it's like, well, I think we're headed that way in many ways. And it's one of those things that is such a newfangled Gen Z millennial type thing that, someone like me, a Gen Xer, would say, that's kind of cool, but stupid. And why do you need that? But, oh, I'll buy one, because that's who we are. It's like, we have all the video game systems, but I still value hard things. My husband and I, we've been married for 26 years. In January, 26 years. And since we started dating, every year for Christmas, we get an ornament that represents our year. And so our Christmas tree every year it'll be 26 different types of ornaments that represent our year. So when we went on vacation this year to Cabo, we got an ornament. And I'm hoping that my daughter, who helps pick out ornaments, will kind of treasure that kind of memory keeping, because for us, we can say, oh, it's an ornament of our little golden retriever puppy when we got her that year. There's stories connected to every single thing on that tree. And, it's so kind of old fashioned in a way, but there's some good things about old fashioned things.
Agreed. Yeah. And, maybe you said you just turned 51.
In April.
You're just a child. I just turned 52. No, but it's like, you get to that point where, you become suspicious of young people. And I remember having this distinct feeling like, oh my God, I've rounded the curb, when I was sitting in an Apple store recently. And I'm looking around at, all these probably millennials or Gen Zers racing back and forth. And I'm thinking, what are all these young people doing?
What are they doing? No, or when you start looking at, I haven't been to a theme park, but I noticed around 45, the last time I went, I was reading the warnings that are posted at the front of every line. It's like, oh, I got that. Oh, high blood pressure. Well, do they really mean? That's how you know you're old.
You have the prostate kind of issues. Yeah, it's grim.
Y'all are hilarious.
But, it's funny with the relationship with our objects, these precious objects. And you have to wonder, when your life is in the cloud, on a bigger level, how does that affect the way your attention span? I know mine is like, unfortunately,
yeah.
We digest little tidbits of information. It's deep, thinking about it.
And storytelling. I mean, how do we pass down the stories of, what grandma did or what I did? Or, I mean, again, it's in your story, Yasmin, of that, the legends and how you still need a voice to, even if it's a digital one, to tell you what happened just, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I mean, the stories over this past, year and a half are going to be incredibly remarkable and tragic. And, as a writer, I'll be reading those because it's a part of our fabric of who we are.
Right. Yasmin, can you talk a little bit about, I think I read somewhere that you're first generation Ghanaian, and that you grew up kind of in between two different worlds. And you can see that in the book in a lot of ways as well, with Nina and her adoptive parents and her adoptive family. But can you talk a little bit about yourself and about your own background?
Yeah. So my parents immigrated from Ghana when they were in their early 20s because they wanted to come here to go to school. So my mom went to Howard University, and that's where they met in the DC area, and then had me. And so while my mom was finishing school and everything, then I went to go live with my grandmother in Ghana, and she took care of me until I was brought back here. So growing up and in that DC area, there is a big population of immigrants, period, but like definitely Ghanaians and other Africans are in that area. So there's a big culture there. And so when I say I was growing up in two worlds, it's like, between the hours of 8 o'clock and 3 o'clock, I'm in the American school and I have, all my American friends and they're eating all this like chicken nuggets and all this other stuff. And it's like really cool. And they're talking about, we Saturday morning cartoons and all these things, right? And sleepovers and slumber parties. And then I go home and I don't have like the pizza and the McDonald's. I have, my spinach stew and rice and my fufu and my, jollof rice. And I'm like, well, where is my McDonald's? So like, and my mom is like, oh, well, do you have McDonald's money? What are you doing? So that's how, and
that
so
transcends. Do you
that
have
transcends.
McDonald's?
Do you have McDonald's? What is that? I don't know this McDonald's. And so, so like that was my growing up in two cultural worlds because, when I'm in school, it's something different. And I'm like, Mom, I want to go to, a sleepover. And she's like, I don't know these people. And she only knows her Ghanaian friends and things like that. And so those are the two different things. How do I balance that? And so I grew up really wanting more of the American than the Ghanaian because I felt like, how teenagers are. Like, I don't know, Rachel, if your daughter is like that. Sometimes my daughters get a certain kind of way with me. And they're like, they feel like you're repressing them. So I felt like repressed, like you want me, I'm in America, I need to be an American, and all this. And so that was my struggle. And so it wasn't until, I reached my 30s and things that I was like, you know what, Yasmin, you really have like this rich culture. There are not a lot of people who know where they came from, like all the way, to the motherland and all this other stuff. And you really, really have to like embrace that. And so that's why I was like, well, my stories now are going to be so, African rich, and I'm just going to love the culture. And that's where the tribe came from, this love of making Africa this one Africa, right? That is trying to get and own everything that they've ever had taken from them. And it's just like what Rachel was saying about storytelling. Our storytelling, we didn't have a whole lot of pictures. So our storytelling with my parents is verbal. It's my mom sitting down and saying, this is what, this is how your dad and I, this is how we met. He had this red car and that I thought it was a red BMW and I thought it was cool. And that's what got, all that stuff. And I don't get, I don't know that stuff. And so I just soak all that in. So I just love a story. So when I was reading your book, or listening to the audio, because I love the story to be told to me. And so I was listening to the audio and I'm like listening to Mickey getting this background information about her own family that she's learning about, right? From her parents or a little bit from Uncle Brian. And then when she's trying to, get this information about Nadia, and then she's talking to the people at the diner and that whole shopping. And so all these stories are coming at her. And it just made me feel like, oh, I just love this kind of thing. And I could understand why she's like eating all this up, and how a person could get so like obsessed with finding out who this person is, who is this Nadia person, because all these people are telling me all these different things, and I just got to uncover this secret that is Nadia. But then she also has this secret that is her, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, with the scar, and like, what, you know, what is this? And everybody's telling her different things. And so I totally got that. And I totally got like the whole family atmosphere. And I promised when I was listening to it, I said, I don't know Rachel's family, but this is all Rachel's family. This is her daughter. And I was like, I mean, I had notes and I was like, that's her daughter. And I was like, I wanted to ask you, Rachel, does Mickey own any of her own clothes?
Probably like three things. You have a daughter. We have daughters. And, you know, I have these lovely pair of white Adidas, and they're like kind of Stan Smiths, but without the green. And I've been protecting them because they're like stark white and pristine. And I noticed, you know, there's starting to be little smudges here and there. And it's like, oh, what the hell is happening with my Adidas? Well, I saw because they were on her feet. And it's like, well, those are like the untouchables, but it didn't matter because, you know, there are three of us, my husband, Maya, and me, and we're our little collective, and we wear the same size shoes, and she wears my clothes. Like yesterday, I had on some of her things, and, you know, no,
I was going to
she
say,
does not.
do you retaliate by
Yes, I am
some of her stuff?
constantly in her stuff. I can't wear her shirts because at 17 she cuts them off like right here. And
oh my gosh, so does mine.
Yeah, she has a little waist. Like, where are your clothes at? But
where's the
yes,
rest of your shirt?
but that's a part of this kind of, even with clothes. It's like, well, I bought these shoes and this is why I bought these shoes. And, oh, we bought that dress together. We go to Sephora and Ulta and all these, and they're kind of like these tribal things we do together as Howzell Hall women. And it's a weird, wonderful thing. So no, she does not. And her mom, Corey, me, we have better clothes because we will spend money. I have a pair of Coach loafers that I kept for nearly 20 years because back in the day, you paid a lot for Coach and they were like really, really made. And so they'd stay forever. And Maya found her way into them because they were great shoes. You know, I have bunions right now because of cheap shoes. And that's what I could afford at 24, you know? So if my mom and I had worn the same sizes, she had better clothes, better shoes, better handbags, better everything than I did at 24. So no, you share those things and they become a part of the family story, you know? Yeah.
Right. Well, Yasmin, one thing I wanted to ask you about, and Rachel was just touching on it a little bit, is just the importance of tribes and, you know, these tribal familial ties that go back generations and generations, you know, and how deep they are. And obviously that's at the center of your book. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Tribes, that has to do with, at that time, I was trying to figure out like what is my tribe, because I had just moved with my kids to South Carolina and we were all by ourselves. We didn't know anybody because I said, I'm going to start life fresh and brand new right here in this place. You know, I'm not going back and living with my mom. I know I'm not, you know, like that's what I was thinking. So in trying to figure out how we're going to like survive here and do all that, I got to figure out who's my tribe. And so that made me think about like, you know, the tribe that I grew up with, the family that you're born into, you know, and, you know, whether it's for good or whatever, but that's like your tribe. And then, you know, there's family that adopts you in, there's family that you choose. And so those are the families that, you know, Nina goes through, is her biological, the ones who choose her. And then the ones that she chooses. And so the ones that you choose, like, you know, Rachel choosing her husband, and they become a tribe, and this is the tribe that they've created. Like, those are really, really important because you have chosen these people to be in your life, to be a part of your life, and to be like this unit. And I just thought that was so wonderful. So as I was cultivating my tribe, and you've got to be so careful with, you know, who you bring into your tribe.
Yes.
You know, And so as I was cultivating that, I was just like, man, I really appreciate when you don't have a good tribe, you really appreciate like those people who are in there and are like your ride or dies. And so that's why I wanted to talk about like just having your tribe. And it could be the tribe is however you make it. It doesn't only have to be the people that your tribe could be, the most important tribe that you have could be the one of your own making. It doesn't have to be the ones that you are born into. And so those are the things that I wanted to also, capture in the story, is like the importance of just having good people around you, no matter how they come in.
That's a question I want to ask you on the actual crafting, your day-to-day. I mean, this is a big book, and it's a complex book, and it's a violent book, and you are a mom. How did you reconcile a lot of the scene, a lot of the hard stuff, and knowing I have this girl over here? Are you writing to her? How did being a mom affect you writing Her Name is Night?
So being a mom and having, a girl in my life, one of my kids and everything like that, I wanted to show them how strong, a female can be, a girl can be. I wanted to show them how strong someone who is of a minority group, because they know their grandmother is, and the struggles that she had. So how strong a person who always seems like the underdog can be, and that you can save yourself. So it was very important to me that my character, these things sure happen, but if you see, she saves herself. Time and time again. And it is in her strength that gets her where she is. And sure, she has people to come in, at the right time and help her, but ultimately she always saves herself, because she just has that instinct. And so I wanted to show that, not just to my kids, but also to me, that, hey, you can save yourself, you can do this thing. And anybody who reads this book, yes, there's all these things that happen, and it's super violent, sure. But like ultimately you can save yourself no matter how big or small. And those are the messages that I really wanted. And I talked to them about it. Only one of them, the oldest one, has read it. The youngest, not so much, because, she just can't be bothered with me. But yeah,
today.
Exactly. But like when my oldest read it, he was like, Mom, like I totally understand like this story, this journey that Nina is on. And I was like, thank you. Like I was really touched with that, because he really saw like the inside, like the things that I was trying to say, the messages, rather than all this stuff that was happening and all the shoot 'em up stuff, all that. So yeah, that's where I was. And I saw that also like in your book, right? In the conversations that Mickey was having with her mom. And when, and you had mentioned it, when you said something like, expensive shoes don't give you bunions. Yes, that's in the book too, right? And then there's see, I remember these things. And there's something else in the book that I had written somewhere, but like she said, something about like Black girls are always like harmed or something like that. Like, do you remember saying something like
just going through life with eyes scraping against you, and you're looked at as bad from the get-go. And these are all things that we tell our kids, our girls, that make sure your bags are closed when you go into a store, because you don't want them following you around, down to love lessons. One of my favorite scenes in Toxic Things is Mickey and Corey toward the end of the book, watching Golden Girls eating popcorn and drinking red wine, and Corey's comforting her. And my daughter doesn't drink yet, but we do that. Golden Girls is our go-to. I watch it every night, and it's hers. And we love popcorn with lots of salt and butter. And we have hard conversations about life over that. So I wanted to put those relationships in there, and those moments that a lot of parents have with their kids. Sometimes that we kind of like glance over, it's not important, but it's like, yeah, it is. They rely on us for wisdom, you know, generation after generation of wisdom. Corey telling Mickey that in relationships, and my brother told me this, my older brother told me, in relationships, you are the flower, and whoever you're with, they are the gardeners. They are tending to you. And if they can't do that, you don't need to be with them. And I've told my daughter the same thing, and she will tell her daughter or son the same thing. So again, it's passing knowledge on, you know, from generation to generation. What was the hardest part of the story for you to write?
The hardest part, that's a good one. The hardest part of the story was the village scene, was what eventually happened, you know, to her family there, and the things, the atrocities that she had to see when, you know, especially like when her dad is killed. Like, that devastated me. And, you know, I was mad at myself, and I'm the one who wrote it. And I'm like, you know, I'm like, what the hell wrong with you?
What you do that for?
I mean, I'm like, you know, Pakistan. I'm like, what are you doing? And so, but I mean, I was like, that is what she needed to, you know, feel, is like this.
It's the truth.
Loss. He's gone. You know, and like I said, you know, with my dad, like that was, I think, the moment I was like, wow, he's like really gone. You know what I mean? And he's not,
despite the promises of an afterlife, despite all of that, he's gone.
He's gone. I mean, all the stories or whatever, like he's gone. You know what I mean? And so like that was really the hard part. And so when she ends up like meeting the, you know, the rest of the people, like the knights and everything like that, like I was so happy that they were able to take her in, and she was able to have this relationship, this true relationship that she so much deserved after like everything that she had been through. And so, yeah, that definitely was like the hardest part, because I was just like, I love that village, and I felt for her.
It was interesting when because she does kind of tap into this primal, like warrior part of her nature, you know, and yeah, there's some really
heart-wrenching. Yeah.
And there's some,
but it's so honest. It's honest, and that's what I love about your writing. Yeah, sure, there's some parts where you're like, oh, but it's not torture porn. It's not provocative for the sake of being provocative. It's an honest story, and I love that. I absolutely love it, and I'm so glad, you know, that you are experiencing some success already with it.
Yes, thank you. But I also felt like, I'm not I don't want to give like spoilers for your story, but there was a, you know, the scene, you know, towards the end, when Mickey gets hurt, you know, or whatever, and that to me was like devastating because of who was doing it, you know what I mean? I'm being vague, but you know what I mean, right? So like that to me was, you know, similar to my story, because that the knowledge that she's going to have to go forth with, how it happened and who it happened from, and all this other stuff, that's always going to be kind of like devastating, and you know, to that sense of, you know, wow, like that's how that person felt about me, and that touched me, because I felt like it very much was like that with Nina when she found out like who betrayed her. You know what I'm saying? Like, wow, it's like that, you know? So
no, it's interesting. I was on a panel last night and we were talking about what noir is. And, you know, it was a very smart conversation, but ultimately for a story to be noir, to end as noir, the main character has to kind of be in the gutter in some ways. And even with both of our books where there's some closure, there really isn't, because you're still living with that trauma. You know, it's kind of like a victim's family. It's like, okay, fine, they caught the bad guy, but my loved one's gone. They're gone. And there's a hole in my heart that cannot be filled. And there are other people who are going through this. And yes, Mickey is shiny and pretty and smart and all the rest of it, but she's been traumatized. Nina has been traumatized, and whatever relationships they have in the future, that trauma will inform, the success or the failure of those relationships. And that's, in some ways, that's sad, but that's all of us, right? I mean, we've all been hurt in some ways, either intentionally or not, but we carry that. And for writers, we write about it. And so I find it funny, when readers like, oh, you should have you triggered me. And it's like, well, yeah, I'm triggered. That's why I'm writing this story. This is my therapy. I'm trying to work, like you said, I'm trying to work some things out, and I'm working them out over 400 pages, but it's still, it still hurts in some ways. This is just how we choose to deal with that pain.
Rachel, I was going to ask you about, would this be a stretch? Just kind of occurred to me. A lot of your books really are about Los Angeles, of course, in all different sorts of ways. And this one too, of course, is about Los Angeles. And we have, the unscrupulous real estate developer, Peter Weller, in this book. And there's a lot of, I was just thinking about an analogy between what's the name of the shop? The Curiosity.
Beautiful Things.
Yeah, thank you. Beautiful Things Curiosity Shop. LA, it seems like in general, is it's sort of a turning point right now.
Yeah.
And going through this, it's always a city of reinvention.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But reckoning as we go into this digital era with its own past. And I'm thinking about all these objects as kind of an analogy with Los Angeles.
You're exactly right, because we are reinventing ourselves. People think of LA as a new city. It's not. And in some ways, there are things that have been here for a very long time that have meaning to us. Yes, Los Angeles. Natives care about this city. I love Los Angeles. I am not one of those, oh, LA sucks. Every place sucks. People everywhere suck. So that's and someone else will say, it doesn't rain. Yes, it rains in Los Angeles. And we are not on Saturn where it doesn't rain. We just had like days of rain last week. So it rains in Los Angeles. Anyway, we're in my neighborhood, especially, I'm in a historically Black section of Los Angeles. And we are in this weird gentrification thing where it's like, I live in a house that was built in 1937. We bought it in 2000 for $265,000. It is worth almost $1 million. I can't afford my house right now. Google is like 4 miles away. Twitter's 4 miles away. Facebook's 4 miles away. Silicon Beach is 4 miles away. And a lot of those workers are moving into our neighborhoods. And
where are you?
I am in the Crenshaw area.
Okay.
So that's a stone's throw from the airport, not too far from the new stadium. The beach is, a 7-minute drive away. It's a great part of town, but it was a Black part of town. No one wanted to live here until now. So a lot of that history is being lost because the old people who originally bought these houses, old Black people, they're dying or moving away. People can't afford it, so they're moving away. And houses are being knocked down. Stores are being knocked down. There's some stores where Beautiful Things is. It was in a shopping center that was torn down and burnt up during the uprisings of 92. And even now, there are people who are holding on to their businesses and refuse to sell. So it's this weird mix of old and new, of fancy development and kind of the blandification of architecture here. And it's weird and it's tragic. And even in my daughter's lifetime, there are parts of the city that no longer exist. There were Facebook and Silicon Beaches. It used to be wetlands, the Bayona wetlands, and it was swamp. And they built condos, campuses, and you wouldn't know that this is where, egrets and cranes used to hang out. And that is just in my daughter's, lifetime. And it's weird and it's sad because you drive by places and you lament them. But at the same time, personally, it's like, yay, my house is worth more. But, it's kind of like the Bible verse, what the gain the world and lose your soul kind of thing. And that's kind of happening, even if it's in slow motion.
It's funny. My mother is from LA and actually was born there myself, but I came here when I was 3. But her father was a LAPD cop back in the 40s and 50s. And
I think you told me this.
I may have, yeah. And you know, he was a part of Hollywood Station. And when she was a little girl in the 40s, you know, what a time to be in Hollywood. You know, she would go to these glamorous openings and things.
Yeah.
One of his things was he was in charge of security for a lot of these premieres and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And it's amazing. You know, LA is one of those cities, whenever I go there, there's just ghosts from the past coming up through the sidewalk.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And you tell stories. You say, oh, that used to be the Brown Derby. Oh, that used to be the Ambassador. Oh, that used to be. And, you know, 10 years from now, who's going to really care that my high school is built on the land where Robert Kennedy was shot? Because there's a high school there now where Robert Kennedy was assassinated.
When I was out there, a good friend, a writer named John Shannon, you may have met him. He took me to the I forget the exact name of it. It was this little museum of social history in Los Angeles. I forget the exact name. But we went in, and it's, you know, this labor of love, and he's opening up drawers, and there's this like original poster, you know, welcome home, Paul Robeson. Just all these treasures of the past. And you know, the only reason I bring that up is I'm thinking about these objects that are in everybody's garages, you know.
Oh my gosh. So as a part of my promotion, I sent out countless, maybe 50 by now, toxic things like treasure chests, jewelry boxes filled with brooches and watches and old pictures. And I went around to like a whole bunch of LA thrift stores and flea markets looking for these items. And I was just shocked at what people threw away. I have, and this is for future boxes, old letters. Someone wrote to someone else, postcards, pictures that people just kind of toss. And now strangers are buying them and, you know, putting them with their novels. But in some ways it's heartbreaking, but just because it's like, well, someone actually wrote this letter in pencil, and it's such nice penmanship and the stamp and, you know, all this trouble. And here it is on sale at the Melrose Trading Place on a Sunday for $1, you know?
Or living in an old house, you know, like you do and like I do. I don't know about Yasmin, if you live in an old house too, but occasionally you'll find something, you know, like, or like this little, like plastic toy soldier. Or, you know, like, wow, I wonder.
We redid our bathroom, and we found this painted bath tile, this lady in green 1940s wear with a long cigarette. And as we were redoing the bathroom, and we took this single piece of tile to get it appraised, and it's like worth $75 or something, because it was the original tile from the 1937 house. But yeah, you start pulling things out and peeking in, you know, dark corners of your garage, and you find all kinds of things that once meant something to someone before they put it in the garage.
Right. Well, I realize we're kind of running out of time, but it's been such a delight to talk with you both. What's next for you? Rachel, are you going to any plans to do another Lou book?
No, not anytime soon. Not anytime soon, because you know there's so many other stories.
Yeah, that's true.
But my next comes out in July, I believe, and it's called We Lie Here, and it's again another story of a young woman. This time, she goes home to plan her parents' 20th wedding anniversary party, and a woman who says she's her second cousin, comes to Palmdale, where the party is, which is north of Los Angeles in the Mojave Desert, saying that she has something to tell our heroine. But before she can tell our heroine anything, she's found dead in a lake up in the desert. So Yara, our heroine, has to figure out what was it that cousin Felicia wanted to tell me. and what's going on with my family. So once again, it's a family secret book with a young woman protagonist.
Ooh, I can't wait to read that.
Yes.
I hope I don't have to wait too long. Hint, 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 hint.
I can make it happen. I can make it happen.
Yeah.
What about you, Yasmin? Are you going to do another Nina book?
Yes, yes. I already turned in
Yay.
book 2, and it's a complete hot mess. And so, just like Rachel said, with the developmental editor, and they go make it look nice, fine. And so, I think they're giving me grace and not sending me any revisions until after launch. Thank goodness. So I'm expecting to be inundated with something, after launch and everything. But yeah, so. We'll get a little bit more of Nina and her new tribe, and then the old tribe. I think we'll find out. I left some things open, and so we're gonna find out, a lot more about the tribe and its makeup, and how they're doing the things that they're doing, and her new place in it as she's kind of feeling her way into this new situation that she's in. So,
and when is it going to be published?
No one actually told me, but when I looked on the website for Amazon, it says in September of next year. So I was like, well, okay, thanks. So, that's what they said. So I'm like, okay, I can do, I guess. All right then. So
do you have a title for it?
So right now it's, I think they called it, They Come for Night, because someone's coming for them. So like, that's what they decided on. So
what's your title?
Oh, mine?
No, Yasmin. Did you have your own kind of working title?
Oh no, it was Untitled, because I'm the worst at titles. So I was just like, well, whatever you guys think. I'm the worst at titles.
Oh, Magic 8 Ball, what title?
Right. So
I forgot about
so
the
it was
Magic
called
8 Ball,
Untitled. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Before we go, I mean, Rachel, I love the little illustrations that are kind of littered throughout the book.
Yeah.
And also the Magic 8 Ball section.
Yeah, I was so excited we got to keep those, because it had been in my draft, and I'm like, well, the illustrators cost, are they going to let me do that? And they did. I was so happy. So yay.
That's cool. That's
awesome.
Awesome.
That's good to know. I didn't know we could do that. Well, we could try that and see if it works. But wow, okay, because they were nice surprises. Yes, because see, when you get the audio, you don't see that there are little pictures in it. And then when I cracked the book open, because I wanted to compare it, I was like, there's some pictures in here. Like, what? Yeah. I felt cheated.
Yes.
And I didn't want to neglect to ask Rachel about how it ends. Your Audible original.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I love writing that story. Yes. It's a story about a woman who separates from her husband, and there's a neighbor who is kind of creepy, and so she's kind of navigating this new life of hers as a divorcee with a jackass of a husband and a creepy neighbor who keeps eating the oranges off her tree. So yeah, I love writing the story. I have another Audible coming in May, I believe.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's a novella length kind of thing.
Huh?
Is that a novella length or?
Yes, another novella length story, and it's called See How They Run. And it is not an LA story. It's actually a Zion National Park story. So an LA girl going to the wilderness. So that's going to be interesting. I look forward to you all listening to that.
Is it fun to kind of, flex your creative muscles with these different little projects?
Yes, because I get to tell a great, nasty little story, but only have 20,000 words to do that in. So yes, it's a challenge for me, but I'm still getting to, to story write. So yeah.
Well, congratulations, both of you.
Thank you.
Always great to see you, Rachel, and nice to meet you, Yasmin, and congratulations on your debut. It's always exciting to have a debut novelist.
Yes.
Wish you both, of course, all the best.
Thank you.
Hope to have you out here in the desert at some point.
I hope so. I hope so. I've been seeing you all in person.
You know what? I completely neglected our questions from the audience. Jesus. See how I do that. Let's see here. Christina. Estes, our good friend, who just recently won the, I'm going to botch the name of it, but is it the, oh gosh, Tony Hillerman Prize, for her first novel, Southwestern set novel from St. Martin's. So that's really, really cool. And she's also works for the local NPR affiliate, KJAS.
Yeah.
So good friend of the store. And she says, question for Rachel. Last time I saw you at the pen, you said that you wrote by hand.
Mhm.
Do you still?
Yes, I still do. And it's a little slower because, I work a day job that also I'm a writer, and I'm work for a medical center, and it was a lot of COVID writing. And my carpal tunnel syndrome is flaring. So my writing has slowed in some ways, but I still love it. And I still, yes, write longhand. And I'm in first draft territory right now. And I hate first drafts with the heat of 1,000 suns, but yes. Oh my God.
What about you, Yasmin? Do you write longhand or do you write on the code?
I do. It depends.
Yay.
Like, that's where I get most creative, is when I write longhand. And
Mhm.
so that book was written longhand. And then if I have to do something real fast, then I'll type it up. But I love a longhand. I got notebooks for
Yes.
days of
Yes.
and I have my trusty Bic pen. This is what I always
Bic?
write with
What?
that. I know. I mean, it's nice and cheap, and it's never done me wrong. Okay, don't judge my Bic. We'll talk about it.
I suspect you have several of them.
Yes, because they do, but they do so well. I don't know. A blue Bic pen. So yes, Yasmin writes with a very cheap blue Bic pen. That is what I write with.
That is
Yes.
hardcore. That's
You find like a legal pad or whatever it is kind of like that's your id. You just
Yeah.
get it out there on the page. And
Mhm.
yeah. Let's see, Christina, what else do we have here? Here's a question from Gretchen. Recently on, oh, wait a minute. Oh, recently on your Zoom presentations, the screen turns off and on continually. It's not for you guys. This has never happened. This has never happened before. Gosh, sorry, Gretchen, I'll have to look at that. I didn't realize that was happening. I will address that. Here's a good one for Rachel and Yasmin. What do you read when you need a mental break from murder, mayhem, and sadness?
I like those things.
I was
Nonfiction
about to-
about murder, mayhem, and sadness.
Right. I was literally about to say more murder, mayhem, and sadness.
Yeah.
I always listen to that. Yeah. Like
I'm fascinated by it. I just switched to nonfiction. I tend not to read much of anything that isn't related. If it's a romance and somebody still is going to be like jacked over or dead or whatever, I'm just kind of.
So you don't read about unicorns and teddy bears and stuff?
No. Even when I was a kid, reading Jackie Collins, Stephen King, Sidney Sheldon, there had to be some type of intrigue and sin somewhere. I needed,
Yeah. Sorry.
What about you, Yasmin? Are you crime fiction? And
yeah, those are the things that I love. And so if I just want some downtime, like what I'll do is, I'll listen to an audiobook, because then I'm able to just kind of like totally like detach. Or I'm big on watching movies too, so I'll throw in a Mission Impossible, because I love a Mission Impossible.
I watch cooking shows. That's what I do. I like watch Guys Grocery Games and like Worst Cooks in America. That's like my total kind of. And I play video games, but my video games tend to be. Yeah, I'm a gamer.
Okay.
They tend to be violent too.
Shoot 'em up. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Wow, Todd comes in with what's going to have to be the final question. I have I lead a discussion group that's on hard-boiled and noir fiction, and they're all patiently waiting for me downstairs. But let me ask you this final question that's just come in, because it's really a good one. Todd says, for Yasmin, let's see, with as emotionally devastating as Her Name is Night, how do you duplicate that in the second book, or will it be more action-oriented? This one's pretty action-oriented.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely going to be more action, and I think there's still, because just like Rachel said, yes, some things were solved, but there's still that the feeling of loss and things that, you know, that they got to go through. And so just because at the end of the book, she has accepted some things, she still has, you know, this loss that she's dealing with. And she still has, you know, a relationship that she needs to, you know, how is that going to transpire? And how is she going to take her rightful place within the tribe and things like that? So she still has some things that she's got to resign within herself. And so there's still going to be some emotional, you know, flashbacks in terms of, you know, how she used to feel it and things like that. So, but she's also going to have grown a little bit. So that's what good old Todd should be expecting.
For that Todd. Yeah. Well, like Todd, I'm looking forward to your next book. And
Thank you.
yeah, well, I should probably run, but this has been a real treat. And
Thank you for inviting us. It's
You bet.
been a joy. It really has. And congratulations again, Yasmin, on
Yeah.
your success.
Thank you, and same to you. I know why you congratulated me. You know, I'm going to text you in like a few. No, I'm just. That's what I do. I text Rachel, and I'm like, she always helps me out. So I appreciate you. I really, really do, and I'm fangirling. Thank you so much.